St. Louis Jewish Book Festival, next on City Corner. Hi, I'm Sarah Thompson and welcome to City Corner. Well, the St. Louis Jewish Book Festival is coming up November 2nd through the 17th. And so today we're going to get into all the details of the festival. This is a nationally recognized literary event. In fact, one of the largest in the country. We're going to get into all the details in the first segment. And then in the second segment, it's going to be my pleasure to have a very special guest, Rabbi Yonason Goldson, who is an author who is participating in the festival. But first, with me on set is Jessica Fischoff. Jessica is the Director of Literary Arts for the St. Louis Jewish Community Center, and you have been curating this with a committee for what, the past, past several months?
I know, thank you for having me here, Sarah. It's crazy to actually sit and talk about it and not be like working on it. So I moved here in April to take this position, and I was very fortunate that we had a wonderful committee already established, 30 just really active volunteers at the J, who many have been doing this for years and years and years. 2 fabulous committee chairs, and they sat down with me essentially on day one, and we started kind of picking out what different authors we were interested in bringing in or what different topics we might want to focus on. And so with their help, I was able to really go through and sort through some names of some different authors that we hoped would come. And now we have 27 authors coming in the next few weeks.
So it's 27 authors. And I will say, this is a big event. This is a nationally recognized literary event. Correct. I know the numbers have changed over the years, but I do remember at one point saying the attendance was like 10,000 attendees each year. So, this is huge.
Yes, it is. They have just really done a great job. It's the 46th year. So just every year, I think there's more and more people that are coming, and they've built up this foundation of people who might not even be involved in the J in another capacity, but really look forward to these events and having this opportunity to have 2 weeks of just fabulous authors coming through.
Right, and we should get into some of those, because I know over the years, obviously when you've got the big names, sort of celebrities or actors who come, people really notice that. So I think in the past, I was looking back at some of that list where it was like William Shatner, I remember was one year, and Lily Tomlin, I remember was another year. But you've got a good lineup. I had nothing to do with it. You've got a good lineup this year. So maybe let's start things off. We've got some graphics we can kind of walk through, and it might match actually the way that we've put these in order. Is probably what you have chronologically, but let's just talk about this and really emphasizing that there's a range of topics, correct?
Yes. Mickey Bergman is our opening night speaker. He runs the Richardson Institute and has been kind of the right-hand man to Bill Richardson in helping to bring about the release of Americans that have been held abroad in different prisons, most recently Brittany Griner's case. And I'm really excited to have him come and talk to us, because I think it's such a really important topic as we are following things on the internet and we're kind of following these stories and tracking them, for him to give us some key insight to that as well.
Really interesting. I didn't realize that he was involved with with Brittany Griner with her release, or that exchange. That's great. And then coming up next, so each night, I think this is sort of curated to each different evening as a sort of different theme.
Yeah, exactly. There's some authors that we've paired together because we thought it would be a good fit. Noah Rinsky, Old Jewish Men's Guide, was like an Instagram account, a social media account that kind of just like took over the internet by storm. And I'm excited for him to come because he's part of our humor night. And he's going to hopefully be presenting a number of different memes from his website some hopefully never before seen things. But I think it's just going to be a really big party to come and listen to him speak.
And when people are there, there's also, we should point out, the authors speak and they have a presentation, and then there's basically a Q&A that sort of follows afterwards.
We do about a 45-minute presentation. That's either one author who's speaking the whole time about their work, or it's multiple authors that we feel like have been a good fit together for the topic at hand. And then we open it up to the audience. So there's a 15-minute, 20-minute Q&A where the audience can engage with the authors and ask questions. And then we do a book signing at the end, of course. And we have a bookstore on site as well, so you can pick up copies of the book there, get them signed, start doing your holiday shopping, because we're kind of falling into the end of November and a chance to just speak with the authors at each event.
That's great. Well, let's keep going. Let's see who's next. So yes, you're not just sitting in the audience.
So Goyhood is Reuben Fenton. It's his first novel, and I love this moment of just serendipity, because we put him on our male humor night, so it's him and Noah Rinsky, only to find out later that their fathers grew up being very good friends. Had no idea they're coming from different parts of, the literary world.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a really fun night of watching the two of them engage as
Are
well.
their families coming?
I hope so. I hope they're able to bring some of their family in.
That's great. That's great. And then what do we have? Let's see what we've got next going in.
Yeah, so this is Adam Nimoy, Leonard Nimoy's son. And Leonard Nimoy was actually a guest at the book festival many years ago.
Yeah.
But this is essentially his memoir about his relationship with his father, the kind of difficult times that took him through, and then the reconciliation.
Interesting, really interesting. I mean, these are like big names. I mean, these are really interesting. I mean, I know that this attracts a lot of people just because they want to have, I think there's such an interesting experience you have when you're reading a book, especially if it's a memoir, if it's a topic of interest to you, just to hear directly from the author. You just want to almost get more into their mind a bit.
And I think it's a great way. You can always go and you can always read the book. And I encourage everybody to read every book that they get their hands on. But I think it's also a way to really get a little bit more insight into the author's story, because there's most likely and usually things that come up in those conversations that aren't necessarily a part of the book or that are alluded to in the book. And then when you go and you read, you have this really great understanding because you've heard the author speak, you know the backstory now, and it just, I think, helps inform the whole reading experience.
Those are always great in the Q&A when you think there's something really profound behind something. The author's like, no, I actually decided to include this for some completely random reason.
That happens more often than not.
Yes. I love that kind of back and forth with the audience. Let's take a look at what's next.
Yes, so Brian Levant and Fred Fox are coming, and Brian is one of the original writers of Happy Days, and it's the 50th anniversary of Happy Days this year. So these gentlemen are making the circuit right now of the kind of national media tours, and they're going to come and they're going to show some behind the scene bloopers and give us some good insight. It's also the night before the election, so no matter how you feel, it's going to be a really fun night of just catching up on this show that I think has meant a lot to people of all different generations.
Yeah, I was going to say this is always the first 2 weeks of November.
Yes.
St. Louis, and of course this is falling.
I know, my first year on
it's not an election year. A lot going on. I don't know how far I had to skip in, so we're going to just kind of run through the graphics because I do want to make sure with time that we print out that you have like I want to make sure we don't skip over too many.
No, this is great. This is Benjamin Ginsberg. He's a professor at Johns Hopkins. He's talking about the new American anti-Semitism, which I think we can all agree is a pretty important topic, especially with what's going on right now. We have Julia Quinn.
I was going to say, I want to bring that up bring that back to Benjamin Ginsberg because that is incredibly important. I mean, with what's happening, not just this past year, but I mean, that's ongoing. So I think that's going to be really important,
Absolutely.
A really important discussion. And then, of course, we skip ahead to something slightly lighter, but a really big name, Julia Quinn. So anyone who has Netflix, who watched Bridgerton, explain who Julia Quinn is.
Yes, Julia Quinn is the mastermind behind the series Bridgerton, which I think is just taken the world by storm, and she is going to be here for our Women's Night, and we're doing a whole event for that as well. We're doing an hour-long reception starting at 6:30, and it's a tea party. It's Bridgerton themed, so you can come, get some tea, get a cocktail. She'll be speaking with Felicia Grossman, who's another romance writer, and it's just going to be a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. And we're going to probably have to I want to make sure with the time, skip through some of these pretty quickly. And I want to mention that these are sort of your headlining speakers. There's other speakers. In fact, one of our guests later on in the show. So this is what you the committee works on to bring in these big name authors.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So we have some larger names. We have some first-time authors or maybe some more unheard names that we just feel are really important voices in literature. And it's a great way to see some up-and-coming authors as well.
Yeah, no, I've always appreciated that over the years that there's sort of local or regional authors who participate as well as, bringing in the big names. So we've got here, as we sort of just wrap up with this lineup, I'm looking at Father versus Son.
That's our first attempt at promoting poetry, which I fully support. I'm a poet, so I'm really excited about that event. And then our Kristallnacht event, Arena's Gift, which we do a Kristallnacht event kind of in collaboration with the Holocaust Museum every year. So.
And I want to mention that too, because some of the speaking engagements aren't necessarily, almost all of this is entirely on the campus at the J.
Yes.
But some of it you've partnered with other venues or others like the library, or do you want to talk briefly about that?
Yeah, we're doing the last night event is featuring Daniel Handler, also known as Lemony Snicket, who's definitely one of our larger names coming. He just wrote a memoir, so it's going to be a family-friendly event, and we're hosting it at the county Clark branch, the brand new
library, St. Louis County Library, at the headquarters there.
And so I think it's going to be wonderful. I'm going to be moderating that, so I'm a little bit biased.
No, we'll try to get that one up. I don't know. I think that was one of our last ones I do want to bring up too, gosh, you have so many. I mean, we don't have enough time to get in here too. And this one I saw that had special underwriting, but the Klansman's Son, this one with our Derek Black. Briefly tell me about about what he's going to talk about in this book.
Our Derek grew up as the godson of David Duke, and their father was the creator of Stormfront, and they themselves had a large part in the children's KKK website, only to go to college and start realizing that maybe that's not the route of life that they wanted. Became friends with some Jewish kids who invited them over for Shabbat dinner and started going to that religiously and completely denounced white supremacy. The book, I think, just won a big award from the ADL, and now that's kind of their mission, is to go out and speak about how wrong that mindset is and how much they've learned in the process of getting out of it. So I'm excited for that one as well.
Yeah. So that's going to be, on here for this. Well, this is all really great. I mean, I wish I had more time. We've got this big booklet, and there we go. There's Daniel Handler, that people may know as AKA Lemony Snicket. So, I mean, so there's a lot. And I read too, you're a writer. You said you're a poet as well.
Yeah.
And so how is it for you is there a difference when you're wearing a hat sort of as to have to curate the festival, knowing that you want to make sure you're hitting everyone's interest for the audience, but is it a different side of things versus when you're a writer? And
I think for me, what I really love is the curation process of it, and being able to kind of look at the different works that authors are writing and what would fit best and what then we can provide to our audience, because we could find 20 romance writers who are amazing, but we want to be able to offer a diverse opportunity for people to come and listen to different things. So for me, I really enjoy the kind of curation process of figuring out what authors I think are going to spark conversations, spark interest in people, and really generate maybe a new community of literary lovers at the end of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what's also timely, and then I guess whatever doesn't work out can always maybe be planned for next year, right?
Yes. We're going to be expanding our programming next year as well throughout the year. So we already have some authors planned, one for January. We have a poet coming in April for National Poetry Month. So you'll start to see more than just the November chunk of literature as we move forward.
That's a great change just for those where it might not be able to fit into that.
Yeah, and they've always done it a little bit, but I want there to be events all the time. So now they're stuck with me.
You're making your mark. You're making your mark very early.
We'll see what they let me do.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here. We're going to put that up on the screen for you so you can check it out. First, just head to the website, because that's where most of the information that we've covered is going to be, and you can print out the full schedule and take a look at what you want to attend. There's all the handles for Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly Twitter. But again, it's November 2nd through the 17th. This is the 46th annual St. Louis Jewish Book Festival. But we're going to take a quick break, and when I return, I'm going to be joined by Rabbi Yonason Goldson. He is an author, and we're going to get into all the details of his book and how he's participating in this year's festival. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Sarah Thompson, and welcome back to City Corner. Today's program, we've been looking at the St. Louis Jewish Book Festival, which is November 2nd through the 17th. And now it's my pleasure to be joined by one of the authors participating in the festival. With me in studio is Rabbi Yonason Goldson, who is the author of Grappling with the Gray, an ethical handbook for personal and business prosperity. And you exist in this space of ethics. I'm going to read off your list of, give me a second here as we put the camera on you. You are a keynote speaker and consultant, a TEDx presenter, director of Ethical Imperatives, LLC, a former newspaper columnist, retired high school teacher, an award-winning Best Podcast host from the Davey Award, an award recipient for storytelling excellence, and named a top 50 global thought leader and influencer on culture by Thinker 360. And you've been cited in a lot of publications people know, like Forbes and Newsweek and other. So you sort of exist in this space talking about ethics. And I just wanted to ask you, and you call yourself, let me get this right, the ethics ninja. All of that being said, what is it that you do? That big introduction, what do you do? What is the ethics ninja? What do you do?
That's a good question for this generation, right? What's an influencer? And I'm not even sure I am an influencer. But my mission is really to address what I think is a serious problem in our culture, the tribalization, the polarization, the unwillingness to reach across this increasingly wider and wider rift that separates ideologies. And it's creating this gridlock. We can't get anything done. There's so many as we're approaching an election. And many of us are just not excited at all about the choices that we have, and yet we seem to keep getting into this situation again and again. So ethics is one of the most foundational principles in Judaism. And it teaches us that even if we have very different points of view, even if we have different worldviews, we can still engage each other with civility, with thoughtfulness. I can make the effort to understand where you're coming from. You can make the effort to understand where I'm coming from. And we could try to find common ground. And even if we don't end up agreeing, just the process of engaging one another respectfully, civilly, thoughtfully is going to create a healthier, more functional, and more vibrant world and society.
So with a lot of, I want to get into the book, but before I do, obviously you brought up, sort of what's going on, in politics, but in general, so you will, on the consultancy side and working with different people, help bring people together and develop in discussion and dialogue. Is it an ethical mindset? And I was going to ask you, what is the difference between critical thinking about something and then ethical thinking?
Well, I think critical thinking is what you need first.
Okay.
And that is also something that's not always in ample supply. It's a willingness to look from both sides.
Okay.
Right? Because if I don't understand your point of view, and I don't understand how can I know you're wrong? And if I don't understand why you disagree with me, how can I know I'm right? So there has to be this willingness to explore from all the different angles. That's why diversity is such a critical element in having a healthy culture. It's not just checking boxes and having different identities. It's having people who come from different backgrounds, different viewpoints. So together, we end up with a more cohesive, more comprehensive worldview, and we all understand better together if we're willing to have those kinds of conversations.
And you were saying, is it that you find that now people are less willing to hear that, let me explain how I got to where I am side of it? Is that what you're
I think
what's
that's
happening right now?
Definitely part of the problem. I think another problem is a lot of people can't explain
I
why or how they've gotten to where they are. In my TED Talk, I say, ask yourself, where do your values come from? How did you get your beliefs? Did you choose them or did they choose you? Carl Jung said, people don't have ideas, ideas have people. And if you think about what that means, I'm exposed to my parents and my teachers and my peers and then the entertainment industry and the media. How much have I worked my way to my beliefs and how much have I simply absorbed what has filtered into my experience? And if I don't know how I got to an idea, I'm going to be very defensive. I'm going to be very insecure. And insecurity leads to extremism, fanaticism, and division.
How did you get into this line of work? I was reading about you with your biography and that you're a retired high school teacher, and you mentioned, very briefly just now alluding to your parents perhaps, but what sort of led you, whether it was a personal experience or academic experience, to being the ethics ninja?
Well, I grew up in a completely irreligious family. I didn't even have my bar mitzvah observed. Like many secular Jews, I know I was Jewish, didn't really know what it meant, or I knew it was important, I didn't know why. And I was at the University of California studying English literature, and I love the philosophy, I love stories, I love language, I love ideas. But I'm coming close to graduation. What am I going to do with an English degree? Right? So the only thing that seemed to make any reasonable sense was put on a backpack and go hitchhiking across the United States.
Of course.
Sure. Right? And I did that for about half a year, then crossed the Atlantic, went backpacking across Europe. And I ended up in Israel on my way to Africa, Asia, and Australia. But through a series of unlikely events, I ended up connecting with my Jewish roots and discovering that there was a wealth of wisdom and insight and understanding there that I never imagined. And I ended up staying in Israel for 9 years.
Wow.
Met my wife there. We had our first 2 children, and I got my rabbinic ordination, and then went into Jewish education for the next 23 years.
I see.
And when I retired from the classroom, I wanted to take the universal values of Judaism and present them in a way that would be relevant to a wider audience. And so that's when I started my professional speaking and consulting career. And as I was trying to fix on, where should my emphasis be? Well, leadership. There are countless leadership speakers and countless people in communication, and all of these things are important. But I wanted to find a niche that was not widely populated. And that's how I got to ethics. Because again, it is such a foundational idea. And it's something that is relevant to all of us. And when I can start showing people how ethical awareness and ethical mindset is going to affect your relationships, it's going to affect your business, it's going to affect the world that we live in, right? It's relevant to all of us. And if we cultivate this and we try to reinforce ethical values in ourselves and in those around us, we're going to increase and improve the quality of life for all of us.
Yeah, no, that's, thank you for sharing that. That's, no, that's great. And I appreciate you sharing that. There's so much we could cover, and I know we're not going to have time. I want to be sure, as this connects to the book festival, to highlight too. We have 2 things. You have a new book that's on the counter that we brought, and we also have a graphic of, but the book connected to the participation in the festival is Grappling with the Gray, an ethical handbook for personal and business prosperity. So this one, The Spiral of Time, this one was your 2020 book. And so I believe, if I read this correctly, there's a series of different case studies you did here. In a nutshell, just because of time, what was it that you sort of took away from those case studies and that you're sharing with people from the evaluation of those case studies in the book?
Well, one person let me know that he was reading this book with his children at the dinner table, which, it's all worth it for that.
Yes.
Right? Because each scenario tries to present a situation where there are 2 sides. And that's what ethics is all about. If things are black and white, we don't really need ethics. It's clear, it's obvious. But most of life is gray. And it's grappling with those gray areas. That's where we need some sort of ethical guidance. And so each scenario presents a situation and then asks a series of questions. It's really intended for discussion, followed by a sort of overview of how to look at that scenario from different angles. Some of them are true.
Okay.
Some of them are fictional.
Okay.
Just thought ideas.
And so can you give us an example? Because I think when you get into business, right, I mean, this is the overwhelming thing of making profit at the expense of a worker or something like that, right? It's kind of like inherently not balanced, right? So where do you, give me an example of maybe
I was just in Chicago yesterday presenting to a group of executives, and I give them a number of these scenarios. So the one I finish off with is there was a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Safra, lived about 1,700 years ago. And aside from being a rabbi, he was a diamond merchant.
Okay.
So another merchant came to him. He heard that he'd bought a diamond, or he had a diamond to sell, and he made him an offer. What he didn't realize is that Rabbi Safra was still in the middle of his prayers, and he didn't want to interrupt his prayers to answer, so he didn't respond. So the other merchant thought, well, I must have offended him by not offering enough of a price. So he raised his price, right? And he still didn't get an answer. So he raised it again, right? So now Rabbi Safra finishes his prayers, and he says, I'll sell you the diamond, but I'll sell it to you at the first price you said. Because when I heard you say that, I couldn't answer, but I heard you say it, and I thought that's a fair price, so I'm going to sell it to you at that price because I made up in my own mind that was fair. So then I asked the executives, should he have done that? Or should he have just taken the higher price?
What was the response?
Well, as you might imagine, there were different ways of looking at it. And in a nutshell, what we really came up with was that he was under no obligation to sell it for the lower price. But he had set standards for himself. And he felt that even if it was 100% legally defensible to sell for the higher price, but his own personal standards of ethics required him to honor the commitment he made in his own mind. Now, that may not apply to all of us, but are we always looking to raise our own standards a little higher, to be a little more to expect a little more from ourselves today than we did yesterday, or this year than last year. And if we take that attitude, this book that came out a few years ago by Carolyn Dweck, Growth Mindset, everybody's talking about, right? It's so consistent with this idea, that idea of personal development, of expecting more from myself, of growing, right, in every aspect, intellectually, emotionally, psychologically, and ethically.
That's really interesting. And then it's like, the next question becomes that is the obstacles in people's personal lives to position themselves to be able to expect the best of themselves, right? Which kind of
and everybody's on a different level, a different path.
Absolutely, absolutely. So interesting, because I know when I was reading the summary too with the book, it alludes to, you're saying just that companies and on the business side, employees and companies that are more, have that sort of ethical mindset, that they have better outcomes in sort of their performance. And so I don't want to give away the book, and you're going to be talking more at the festival about that. So we're going to put that information up there. But I wish I had more time with you. There's just so much more to share. But people, when they go to their website, we're going to put that up there. What can they find? Do you do consultations and all of that? I just want to make sure people we're going to throw up that on the screen, the full screen graphic. But you've got your books listed on the website. What else can people find?
I do training programs, facilitations. My great love is keynoting.
Okay.
There's
Graduations, all of it.
Well, haven't done graduations yet, but like corporate conferences or association conferences, that type of thing. But when you get a group of people, and I use so much storytelling, that's the medium for getting ideas to sink in, connected to a story. And I mean, Judaism is rich with this. I mean, that's what the book festival is all about.
Yes.
The stories that we tell. There's a study that has shown that if you just give people information, they don't do much with it.
Yeah.
But if you put it in a story, the people who read literary fiction show greater moral sensitivity than people who read nonfiction. Although you see nonfiction now is presenting in story form because that's what makes it stick. So use a lot of stories. You use them from the stage. You get an audience to come together, responding to ideas that have real value for all of us. Yeah. It's exciting. And then, of course, there's one-to-one coaching, too.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to have you here, really. I look forward to, when I find the time, I do want to read your book. I'm going to put that up there very quickly again. We've got the book information. We've got a few seconds. There we go. Grappling with the Gray, an ethical handbook for personal and business prosperity by Rabbi Yonason Goldson. And it's available at ethicsninja.com, which is his website, as well as Amazon, Business Expert Press, Apple Books, and more. I saw it all over the website, so you can check it out. And again, the book festival, and there's your website, ethicsninja.com. And then the book festival is coming up November 2nd through 17th. And you, in particular, are speaking on the evening of November 14th. So if you want to check it out, go onto the schedule for November 14th. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so
Sarah.
much. Thank you. And thank you at home for watching, and keep it right here on STL TV. Experience St. Louis.